will now dive into our first panel discussion of the day, titled Opportunities for Maritime Services. This session consists of an interactive Q&A where we encourage guests to pose questions and comments to the panelists through a Slido QR code, which you may find on the left and right screens respectively. But before we begin, I would also like to take a moment to thank our gold sponsors, Everio and PSA, our silver sponsors, DNV, Envision Energy, Kongsberg, Lloyd's Register, PIL, and Vopak Terminals, and our bronze sponsors, AET and CMA CGM. Not forgetting our exclusive lanyard sponsor, Bureau Veritas, for helping this event come to fruition. Thank you all for your support. The moderator for this session is Mr. Andrew Hoare, Board Member, Singapore Chamber of Maritime Arbitration. May I now invite Mr. Hoare up on stage, please. In addition, I am delighted to introduce the panelists who will be joining Mr. Hoare for the panel. They are Dr. Wu Chao, Special Advisor, China P&I Club, Mr. Roger Charles, Executive Director, Institutional Banking Group, Sustainability, DBS Bank, Mr. Dimitris Chrysostomou, Managing Director, Asia Region, Columbia Ship Management, and Mr. Wayne Zhuang, Head of Asia Pacific, BIMCO. Please join me in welcoming the panel. I will now hand over the time to Mr. Hoare for this session.
Thought that felt a little bit painful. Hey, good morning, ladies and gentlemen. First of all, a big thank you to the Singapore MPA for hosting this event, inviting me to moderate this session. Services are very important, close to my heart. I started my career in services, and most recently, I've become a little bit more involved in technology. And I'm always never short of trying to get a little soundbite for a very famous ship, the Green Pioneer in Singapore. That is my team's, my group, Fortescue's project. So it's a very exciting project, but it's been delivered not just because of technology, it's been delivered because of the Singapore cluster of skills based here, particularly number one, the impressive support of the MPA, and behind the MPA, probably more than 20, 30 government agencies and other organizations that they brought together to make this world's first ammonia ship possible. Also in collaboration with Classification Society as well. So clusters are always important to Singapore. Clusters are very important for decarbonisation as well. So I think the purpose of today's panel is to include the broader cluster in shipping. You know, technology, we're doing a lot of work, we're doing a lot of money, we're spending a lot of money to support the decarbonisation move. But it'd be a good chance now today to see what my esteemed colleagues here on this panel, from the insurance, from the ship management, from the finance, and from the legal contract side, are also doing in this sector, because we all know that services tend to take fees. They usually wait for things to happen. So we're going to see today whether in fact they're ahead of the curve and doing stuff at the same pace that groups such as ourselves, agencies such as the MPA and Classification Societies. So I'm very pleased to announce the panel here. On the far left is Wayne Zhuang, who represents the legal fraternity and is the Asian representative for BIMCO. We have Dr. Wu Chao on my left, very well known to many of you, many years in London, and now with the China P&I based up in China. Also have Dimitris from Columbia Ship Management, who's going to give a perspective from the ship management side. Ship management is one of the interesting challenges for our own project as well, so I think we look forward to his insights. And also, we have Roger Charles, who represents the banking community here in Singapore, and he is with DBS. So, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for your time, and as we said earlier, please do fire in those questions. I think probably your questions will be far better than the ones that I've put together over the last few days or so, so please do bring them in. So don't be shy. I think just to... Sorry, too many papers. I need to get more technology involved. I think just to kick off to kick off the panel, I'd like to really just pose a question to all of the panel. I'm going to start with Wayne from the left to basically say, how has decarbonisation influenced your maritime sector, your maritime service sector, and how can you achieve the balance between clients and commercial interests? Wayne, over to you.
Thank you very much, Andrew. And yes, I think the decarbonization and the digitalization is just the trend ahead of us. And I presume most of you will know that BINCO, we work very hard to developing a string of the carbon-related the clauses and contracts. Start with the regulation from IMO, EXI, the CII, and now it comes to the EU, just the ETS. We developed the 3 voyage charter party clauses for the voyage charter party ETS, and 1 for the time charter party, and another clause to tackle the third-party ship management. And we also know that the few EU maritime is coming and create a lot of uncertainties. So, yeah, it's not easy to develop a fair and a balanced standard contract across for the industry, because we also know that the charterers, they have a saying, and the owners, they have concerns. But I wanted to summarize it, that is, we got to embrace the change. We got to face the music. This is how it is. And we know that many of our owner members, they are struggling. Start from how to open the MOHA at EU, to how to practice and use it, including how they commercially negotiate with their business counterparts. And I think this is really the difficulties where also we have the opportunities. Yeah, thank you, Andrew.
Thank you, Wayne. So, with those inspiring notes, are you in the driving seat at Columbia today?
Thank you, Andrew. Good morning to everybody, and thank you to the MPA for the invitation on the panel. I think the greatest influence, at least from a ship management and a ship owning perspective, is definitely the speed at which digitalization is developing and automation in our industry. During this week, we've seen the word decarbonization and digitalization used in the same sentences over and over again. So we believe that if I look at this from the ship manager's perspective, we have had to redefine the way we do business in order to stay relevant and compelling for the future and offer the solutions to the maritime industry as specialists in management and operation of vessels. What we have done is we've transformed, although ship management remains our core business, we've transformed to become a maritime services, logistics, leisure, and energy platform, where we have also partnered strategically with various stakeholders to meet this the challenging environment that's coming. I mean, we see a lot more regulation, a lot more requirements for reporting. We'll see new fuels, new technologies, and as such, we'll have to be ready for this industry as it evolves. And I think the phrase adapt or die, I think is very relevant for certain sectors. If you want to stay relevant and compelling for the future, and of course it brings a lot of opportunity to differentiate yourself from the pack. And of course, with the complexity that's coming in the industry, I think we'll see a lot more consolidation. I think a lot more outsourcing to various service providers. And I think that's the way it's going. And I think so business as usual, I think, is not an option going forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Andrew. How about you? Is your work relevant now in the finance sector to decarbonisation, or just doing what it always used to do?
So I guess back in 2022, DBS was the first bank in Singapore to publish its net zero targets. It's called Our Path to Net Zero. And that covers 7 sectors, some of which are hard to abate, including oil and gas, aviation, but more importantly, shipping. And so that sets out what we need to do year on year to 2050 in each of these sectors in terms of their emissions intensity. So we essentially set ourselves a carbon budget year on year, which we will publish year on year. into the public domain. So what does that mean for the bank? That means some difficult conversations where we see some of these sectors not really moving or not really transitioning to a lower carbon, because maybe there's no solutions. For example, real estate. Real estate relies on the grid, relies on power. But for shipping, it has all these externalities. It relies on infrastructure, new fuels, technology risks. So what we would do, we would year on year, we would monitor how that goes. And again, these difficult decisions come in where we would want to only finance more efficient fleets rather than more inefficient fleets and customers to that extent. So that's on the exclusion part. So that's the challenge, I guess. That's the hard decisions. But on the opportunity side, then that opens up a huge amount of opportunity in terms of there's a lot of sustainable finance, there's a lot of green finance, there's a lot of transition finance capital waiting to be deployed and mobilized. And so in that opportunity lies new fuels, new technology. And, we not only look at these from that perspective, but also from the customers who are adopting that.
Thank you very much. Dr. Chow.
Good morning, everybody. And I would first like to thank MPA for their invitation to participate in this very distinguished event. And as Andrew said, that I used to work in one of the IG P&I clubs. And again, here I see my colleagues from the IG. Now I work since 2022 in China P&I club. For those who don't know, perhaps China P&I club is now the number 8 among all its international peers. And it has grown from 2016, 32 million to today, 88 million tonnage insured, and it has grown very fast indeed. So today, I think that the question whether decarbonization in shipping has already influenced our insurance sector. As an insurer, I would say, we are a mutual insurance, not for profit. Our insured are also the insurer. So anything, therefore, concerning their interests, they are at the heart of this new change. So when we have our board meeting, when we have our meeting with our members, we'll always talk about this subject. And we will understand their concern with our loss prevention work, which is which is the key components of P&I business model. And we try to learn to give them the best support. But in terms of insurance, I think it's we really just at the learning stage, preparation stage, because I understand from one of the presentation that 95% of the fuel ship still using the traditional fuel. So we will have to wait to see how the situation develops and how P&I Club can respond. So that's at this stage.
Thank you, Dr. Chance, and good insights in that opener. I'd like to turn just again straight to Wayne from BIMCO. We heard from one side here, maybe there's a little bit of that see how approach, see how things go, to BIMCO, who's always been asked, hey, what is the clause for the future? What are you doing today? I've got some new building ships, for example, the ones announced yesterday. What clauses do I use in my charter? So how does BIMCO respond to that challenge? And how do you, in order maybe to add to that, and how do you work with industry partners to precipitate that and to catalyze that?
Yeah, I think one of the clear change how we see that for BIMCO's daily job is we are be driven or are expected by the industry and largely driven by the regulation side. And so far, BIMCO has developed overall, I think, 350 different contracts and clauses, cover the whole lifespan of the ship, start from the new build con, as Andrew mentioned, to the recycle, which we are going to revise just to make sure it works perfectly with the Hong Kong Convention, which is going to come into force. And the challenge is the regulation is always set out clear objective, but the lack of the practicalities which works with our shipping daily business. And that is my personal observation, because I think the regulator or the policy makers, they needed to be well briefed about our shipping industry. What does it work and how it works? So as you can see, the recent example of the ETS create a massive for our shipping industry. I think the trend in terms of the, just the climate change or decarbonization, that is absolutely, we got to take our serious commitment. But when it comes down to the practicality, that is also the challenge we are facing with, because we realize, okay, yes, if you wanted to stick with the registered owner, then how the owner would work with the manager, and how the owners negotiate with the charters. And now the regulation is going to come into force, but still some of the members are struggling. Have they received any kind of feedback from the European stater after I submitted the MOHA, whatever? So, I mean, this is one of the challenge which I can see. And the other challenge is, faster and faster. And once the regulations and all the industry, they all look at Binko, okay, you got to have some kind of new clauses to tackle it, because you needed to allocate the risk and responsibilities between either the owner, the manager, either the charter or the owners. So, I mean, we got to be fast and efficient than we used to be, because now the shipping industry is just to keep changing. So I think that is maybe the second challenge we're facing. Thank you, Andrew.
Okay, thank you. And actually, just to build on that, I think we often hear the term, nobody ever understands shipping. We seem to be this sort of mythical thing that exists in big industrial groups, or perhaps you're a ship owner, maybe less so. So maybe just back to Wayne or anybody else who wants to answer that. How do you, maybe as a services sector, how do you explain shipping to policy leaders, people who are making decisions about shipping? We've had contentious clauses coming to the market over the last couple of years as well. And again, it's, you don't understand. How do we face that, or how do we manage that going forwards?
I think that is a common challenge for our shipping industry, because we are not a good storyteller. And of course, I have to give the big approach to Singapore, because fantastic the recognition of the local community and the hard work behind. But if you look at a worldwide stage, I have to say that most of the public, they have the lack of the sense and the contribution. Actually, our shipping business has contributed. In other words, we are quite invisible to the public. And then also, it's quite naturally when it's translated to the policy maker, they think, okay, yes, we are just a shipping industry, we are just another kind of industry. So you should do this, you should do that. But if you look at all these fantastic contributions we have made for the global, for the trade, to the welfare, to the world, I mean, we still have a long way to go. And for example, Binko, we just made a short movie, a short film a few years ago during the COVID that we called, okay, Ship Makes World Go. And the key thinking behind is, okay, we got to tell the world the fantastic job, the shipping we have done for our society, for the earth. We delivered the cargo without any kind of disruption, even during the COVID, the lockdown, whatsoever. And I think it is really well received, but maybe not enough, because we are received by our own self in the shipping peers. How we could just put to the CNN, to the BBC, and other big social media, then absolutely will make the story differently. Thank you.
Thank you. I fully believe that. Dr. Chow, more risks, new cargoes, new challenges. How is your sector, how are the clubs going to embrace these new challenges for decarbonisation?
I think the question perhaps come back again on P&I insurance, which is a liability insurance, and which is now together with the adoption of the international conventions, which including these blue cards. So insurance is becoming like a ticket to trade. So without insurance, it is impossible for the world shipping to operate nowadays. So having said earlier that we are still at the learning stage, but actually insurance is a very essential requisite for international shipping. So in terms of the cover insurance we provide, that is with regards to the usage of the new fuel, and there is no problem. Cover is there, with the exception perhaps of the nuclear fuel, and if assuming we consider nuclear is a green fuel. So that's a separate matter. So for all the different types of new fuels that we are talking about, the cover is the traditional cover. If there are crew claims, illness or death caused by the usage, improper usage of any of the ammonia or anything, the new fuel, that there is traditional cover. And so is the damage to the environment. I don't know what types of damage to the environment, how it differs from the oil pollution, the fuel pollution that we know the most. So I know that ITOF is certainly, studying the impact of these new fuels, and so that has its cover as well. And so are the traditional navigational problems. Say, for example, improper use of the fuel resulting in engine failure and causing navigational collision or grounding, etc. Those all finding cover. So I mentioned that there is an exclusion currently, that's nuclear liability. If it is caused by nuclear material, then that is clause paramount in the industry, and that's imposed by reinsurers behind. And that is something we may have to consider further. So in terms of how industry responded to, the P&I industry respond to the new trend, new technology, I think the P&I industry is a very sustainable industry by its nature, because it is not for profit, it is not underwriting risks based on that risk, whether it is profitable, but no, it is based whether that risk is mutual. So the great advantage, of course, I personally take pride in this very old system of more than 150 years old P&I system. And the beauty of it, it has got, the insurer is the insured, they are the decision makers. If it is their obligation to use new fuel, you will understand they're not going to deprive themselves of the very important insurance for themselves. So I think that in that way, I'm very optimistic. My colleagues are all here. I'm very optimistic. The P&I insurance are the big supporters of these new important technology developments.
Thank you, Dr. Chow. Can I just ask one follow-up question, so that not everything is prepared? This is very spontaneous. There's a lot of data available now for ship owners, which gives us scores and so forth for ships for their emissions rating. How far do you think the P&I sector, for example, is looking at that data today? How important do you think it will become over the next few years to understand the emissions profile of shipping in your portfolio?
We will. I think at this stage, we are, really wants to get well informed by class society, by IMO, and by other players such as, people sitting here attending this event. Because, it is our job to understand the risk, but the P&I insurance follow the principle of inclusive rather than restrictive. As long as that interest is so common to the insurers, to the ship owners. So at this stage, we are watching at these risks and trying to learn. And then when there will be, wider usage of the new fuel, through our claims experience, we will draw lessons. And then we will let our ship owner, directors, the board of each club know what lesson we have learned and what conclusion we might, defer from it. At this stage, I think, as I said, we are really watching it very carefully. We try to hold hands with our ship owners, and of course, their concern, they have many other concerns, such, the financial loss if they invest in some unpopular fuel, and they may have a loss if that fuel is ineffective and not being used, and it is a big investment for them. And that financial losses is not a liability, and it is not P&I Club's business. So therefore, we are a club, we call it P&I Club, that stands for protection and indemnity. First of all, we protect them, and through our advice, through our loss prevention work and understanding of the industry, if there is a claim, and then through the indemnity insurance provided to them. But of course, there are so many things, so many challenges right now, and including the regulatory uncertainty. So the technological side, we are guided by the experts. The contractual side, if we have time, I'll talk a little bit about it. But the regulatory side, we need the cooperation of all parties concerned, especially the IMO. But of course, the P&I players have a long history of being very innovative. And that, again, I'm sure my colleagues, they are much more in London, will think about what else we can do to support this new change.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Val, for that insight. Dimitri, you have many clients, many customers, many fuels you're going to have under your umbrella, methanol, ammonia, maybe not nuclear yet, traditional fuels as well. How are you managing with yourself as a ship manager, essentially a third-party ship manager, as well as a house fleet, to improve this profile of emissions for your customers, but also for your own values of your own group as well? And probably touch on the data role on that too.
We're in a transition phase at the moment, and we've heard, again, many speakers during this week. In this transition phase, there are many optimization and efficiency methods or applications which can improve performance emissions by 30 to 40%. So as a ship manager, and again, we're only at the beginning of this, we're in a transition phase, we have to focus on performance optimization. And I think maybe the challenges that ship managers face maybe not appreciated by many. So if you take Colombia as an example, we are managing about 450 vessels. These are vessels of different age profiles, different trading areas, different owning profiles, different levels of modernization. So the challenge is, how do you actually manage a fleet like that, and how do you achieve efficiencies equally across all these varied assets? And the biggest challenge you have is data collection, the quality of data, and the usefulness of data. So we've been very fortunate that we've invested heavily in digitalization a couple of years back. And of course, it's a continuous journey. And what we've done is, under an umbrella of One Link, we have developed a number of applications, such as performance optimization, emissions link, bunker link, route link. We even have something called Arriva 360, which is a training module which is linked to the decarbonization initiatives. And then all of these applications are integrated through something we call Oceanly. And why do I say all this? And that is that on some ships we're collecting data manually. On some ships it's semi-automated, and some ships it's automated. And that's necessary because we have a varied fleet, like I mentioned before. But then collecting of data is just a starting point. It's the old saying of garbage in, garbage out. So you have to analyze the data, and then you have to use the data to make informed decisions. And by doing that, you of course end up in a situation where you achieve these efficiencies. So ship managers, and again, the good, reputable global ship managers are doing similar. And that's one way we help the owners through this transition phase. But we're also heading into an environment which is becoming more complex, more regulation, more reporting requirements. And as such, it's also there has to be a lot of focus on our seafarers and a lot of focus on our staff inside of our offices, which means there's a lot of training, there's a lot of upskilling. And at the same time, we also have to partner strategically with stakeholders in the industry to be involved with the future technology that's coming and the future fuels that are coming. Otherwise, as ship managers, we won't be in a position to offer solutions to the industry and manage the assets in a proper way and deal with the risks that come with the new technology and the risks that come with the new fuels.
Thank you, Dimitri. And turning to Roger, as with all of these, there's a tension between a client's sustainability desire and commercial practicality. I think that, of course, is second to none in the banking environment. How do you believe you're going to manage that challenge over the next few years during this transition?
So I think I'll start off with the data point. And, back in my previous shop, I was tasked to get Poseidon principles off the ground for them. And I remember speaking to the head of shipping, and he turned around and goes, "None of our clients are going to give us this data. No one." And so maybe now this is about 5 years on, speaking to my old shop, like 95% returns on all of that data coming back to the bank. I don't know why shipping gets such a hard time around data. When it comes to getting data from industries compared to the other sectors, you were the first ones to move through Poseidon principles. That data is somewhat assured, and it's given the banks a huge opportunity to identify these opportunities for improvement. So cross-cut that, and then you see your bigger shipping clients who are moving. They've got fleet renewal plans going into the future. They know what they're going to do. So, and do they really need the financing? So that's traditional ship financing, where we can come in and do a lot of that fleet renewal. But they don't really need the help so much. They're creditworthy, they can get access to finance. It's the smaller guys, it's the mid-caps and smaller guys running all of these fleets. And they're the ones that need the financing. And so they don't want to take too much of a risk right now on saying we're going to go into ammonia or methanol or all these alternative fuels. Some of them are even still umming and ahhing about LNG, right? Because we don't know what's coming next. So right now it's back to, I guess what Demetrius said was, around energy efficiency. And, DBS is a part of the GCMD, the Global Centre for Marine Decarbonisation, plug, for the retrofits of ships for energy efficiency measures, whether it be in sails or air lubrication systems, propeller, all of this, and see how we can scale this through finance to the smaller guys. Because energy efficiency in the short term is going to be important to achieve the best efficiency before we get the new fuels.
Okay, thank you, Roger. Some good questions coming up on the screens now. So I'm just going to take a sidetrack, and Dimitri, while I talk a little bit, I'm going to give you the chance to look at the first question, which you can see in front. Is, as senior leaders, how do you plan to navigate the complex regulatory environment to ensure compliance while maximizing operational efficiency? Could you perhaps give your take on that question there, or you can pass it back, Dimitri? Sorry.
That's the first one there.
The first one there. Yeah.
Okay.
I'll give you 10 seconds to think.
No problem. I think the way to deal with this is, again, through strategic alliances. I think we're in a very fragmented industry. We're in a very competitive industry. We're in an industry which is, there's a lack of transparency, and there's a lack of standardization, especially when it comes to the decarbonization. I mean, everybody's creating their own ecosystem. The smaller players, and again, let me remind you that ship owning is predominantly dominated by small to medium ship owners who are left out of this ecosystem where some of the larger players are developing. So I think that we have to move into a direction where there is a certain standardization, transparency, and cooperation. And if I repeat what our CEO said a number of times this week, and it's something that we are moving into. We have partnered, or we will be an anchor client of a very large IT company from the aviation industry. And what we are seeking to do is to bring a common IT backbone into the maritime industry, which will then help, especially on the communication side and on the data side, that there's a uniformity and a transparency in the industry. And I think that's, we're only at the start of this journey, and I think to get to the end of this journey, a lot will have to change. And I think one of the changes is definitely on the transparency and the cooperation between various stakeholders in the industry. Otherwise, you've left a big percentage of the industry, of the smaller players behind, who don't have access to all this.
Thank you. And to continue with that difficult question, and maybe to relate it also to BIMCO. Sorry, Wayne. Traditionally, I always see that BIMCO it's about, without being cynical, lay time and demurrage and time and cost allocations between customers, and you have great clauses to navigate through that. But increasingly, BIMCO has been much more having to be aligned to regulatory and policy environment as well. How do you adapt to the new policies and changes that are coming out, whilst having the multitude of existing sort of frameworks existing within your charter party and contracts? So how do you remain contemporary, also renewing some of the old stuff, as well as looking at the new stuff out there and perhaps unlearning and removing some of the old material that's no longer required? How do you manage that process?
Thank you, Andrew. I think that the short answer is to go with the flow. I can't agree more with what you said, because when we talk about the shipping industry, it's quite fragmented. We are talking about big names, and also we needed to recognize a big chunk of our industries, middle-sized and the small-sized ship owners. And quite often they may be overlooked when we talk about the digitalizations and also decarbonization. And frankly speaking, it's quite a heavy burden to them. So it's quite understandable the reason why they just take a wait-and-see approach. But back to BIMCO, we just continue to deliver the services, with our members, started from, the advice, the support advice from the late time demurrage, as Andrew mentioned. But also we wanted to offer something more to fit the trend we are facing. For instance, we launched the digital, e-bill of lading campaign 25 by 25, because we forecast that digitalization is definitely the beauty how we can achieve by the collaboration, with the electronic bill of ladings, together with the bank, together with the ship owners, together with the cargo owners, etc., etc. And also we are quite keen to support IMO's single maritime window. So that is also, we try to avoid the scenario where the ships sail fast, but wait at the port. So it's complete against the decarbonization objective, but also it makes sense when we talk about the economic OPEX. So yes, as I said, we are quite challenging, and we have BIMCO, shifted the three, pillars. The first is the decarbonization, the second is digitalization, and the third, we keep very close eyes on the renewable energy. As you can see how fast the offshore wind energy, etc., etc. So yes, we are trying our best, I would say. Thank you, Andrew.
Thank you. I'm just seeing another question, perhaps it's coming on the finance side. What are some innovative financing solutions or investment instruments are available to facilitate the adoption of decarbonization measures by vessel owners and operators? I think probably there's only one person who might have a view on that. If you don't want to take that one, there's another question here that we do have.
No, I'm okay with this one. I think traditionally it's been around, ship finance. It's, decarbonization. We've got different instruments out there: green loans, sustainability-linked loans, which is linked to your fleet AER, emissions reduction over the lifetime of the loan. But this money is starting to dry up a little bit for the shipping industry. It's starting to have an impact. The market sentiment's changing. So, for example, you know, any vessel which is carrying fossil fuels or dedicated to the fossil fuel industry, regardless of the type of fuel it's burning, sorts of gets excluded out of this now. And so, because it's drying up, we've got this new space coming in, which is called transition finance, which is going to look at, I guess, the cleaner fuels out there, as well as energy efficiency. So that's more the traditional side. Then you go on to the more non-traditional side, and this is back to the small and the medium-sized companies who don't have this access to finance. And so they need to adopt this. They're being pushed not only by the banks, but by regulation as well, CII, their charterers. And so how are they going to pay for this? And so banks are having to look at this for a slightly different lens because it's bigger risk for them. These maybe are customers that they would not generally be able to finance. So we need risk sharing to come in. So like take the case of Singapore and the Coastal Sustainability Alliance, where you have the MPA, you have Enterprise Singapore, which provides the grant, that 70% risk share. And, you know, that allows us to then now go and finance. We don't need to finance, you know, the construction of electric harborcraft here. We need to finance the guys buying them. And so that risk share needs to come in. And banks, you know, we need to be able to mobilize capital into that space. Now, Singapore is, in that case, quite unique because we have the MPA, we have the Enterprise Singapore grant system. What about other countries where you don't have these grant systems, where you don't have this risk sharing? Then we're going to need other players to come in. We're going to need, you know, maybe multilaterals like ADB or the IFC to come in to help with that. In other sectors, what we've also seen is we've seen the big brands, the big shipping companies or the big brands in that sector coming together to say, okay, look, we've done pretty good on, you know, on our own scope 1 and 2 and, you know, our own company. What about the sector? Let's take a sector-wider approach. And so they all come together, they all put some skin in the game. The multilaterals will put some skin in the game, that it de-risks for the commercial banks to come in, and then that then enables the money, the capital flow down to the smaller players to make it, you know, capital more easier to access, you know, cheaper borrowing. So we see different structures starting to come in, but really when it comes to the big companies, they don't really, you know, on their fleet renewals, yes, they will need financing in the future. But really what needs to happen today is needs to be more of a collaborative approach to really address the bigger portion, you know, the unseen part, which is the mid caps and the smaller players.
Okay, thank you very much for that. Do keep the questions coming. We have another sort of 5 minutes. I think one thing maybe I want to touch on is a little about authenticity and sincerity. So we're here, we're talking about decarbonisation and so forth, but at the end of the day, we hear challenges of US elections, we have many other elections in the world, we have challenges passing through the Red Sea, Ukraine war and so forth. How much of a priority genuinely is decarbonisation? I'm pointing to Dr. Chow now as the first who will ask this to all of you. How much of a priority actually is decarbonisation to, say, the insurance sector to compare to many of those other things which are happening in the geopolitical environment today?
I think that before I maybe tackle this question, I want to come back to the regulatory uncertainty side, if I may, because I think that as a liability insurer, we pay close attention to the development of liability. And for us, also for the shipping industry, for ship owners, the unification of the liability regime is most important. So we know that in terms of the protection of the environment, we have seen over the years CLC Convention, and then the Bunkers Convention, and then the forthcoming HNS Convention. But none of these conventions covers the potential risks potentially arising out of the usage of the new fuel. So inevitably, we see there are different entities being interested and thinking about it for the IMO, perhaps on behalf of the IMO, what needs to be done. So that is, I think it is an important area we must focus on, and that involves collaboration between all parties concerned. And at IMO level, as we know that the Bunkers Convention is widely used, but this Bunkers Convention only deals with the, the fuel and the crude oil as used as bunker, persistent oil used as bunker. And we also have the forthcoming HNS Convention, but that convention, again, only deals with hazardous, noxious materials carried as cargo. So there are similarities to the new fuel substance, but none of them really covers these new developments. So the other thing is also we got to remember that if we revise or make a new convention, as some people suggest, and that always takes time. As we know with the international conventions within IMO, you need so many countries to first negotiate and then agree, and then it takes time to ratify it. And once they enter into force, it will only take effect in countries that are party to the convention. So here, may I just mention that how innovative and pioneer the P&I industry has been. So when these conventions were not ready and the liability regime not ready, and the P&I Club had experience to initiate some voluntary agreements which then support the industry for the benefits of third-party claimants, but also benefiting the ship owners because unification is extremely important. So that's...
Can I pause you there, just in the interest of time, but I think it's great insight. I think it's very clear. Steadfast conventions, regulations are at the forefront of your mind. Wayne, I think probably we know where you stand here. Maybe I just put that to maybe actually to Dimitri for your group. What is your focus on? Are you being distracted by daily meetings about Red Sea transits and so forth, or are you actually full steam ahead on?
I think not. I think as a maritime industry, we are very resilient. We've proven that through the different challenges. I think we will focus on everything. We have to focus on everything. We can't ignore decarbonization because of geopolitical risks. So I think for us, at the end of the day, we need to perform irrespective. And one thing I would like to say is I think it's also an opportunity where, as an industry, we are always remembered or known for the last mistake or incident or accident. And I think this is an opportunity where our industry can showcase, let's say, the contribution it does to every person's day-to-day life. And I think that's an important opportunity to be taken from this situation we're in.
Okay, thank you. And finally, Roger, yourself.
I think there are murmurs, and I think everyone feels it a little bit, that there is a little bit of a ESG backlash with the multiple reporting and pressures which are coming on. I think back to Dimitri's point, I think it's keeping an eye at everything. Performance is very important. And I think that for the decarbonisation agenda, I think it will remain on target, and I think it will remain steady. And that will be underpinned by both regulation, finance to help that along, and more governments getting on board.
Okay, thank you very much.
I think geopolitical elements will impact how fast you can sail, but the decarbonization and the alternative fuels will decide how long you can sail. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Roger. I think that brings us to a close, bang on time, just about. So thank you very much, Wayne, Dimitri, Roger, Dr. Chow. Great insights, I think, for the audience here, and I think quite a few takeaways from this discussion as well. So thank you all, and thank you for the good questions. Sorry we didn't get to all of them, but thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ho and the panelists, for the thought-provoking discussion. Please remain on stage for a group photo. Thank you, panelists and Mr. Hoare.